I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. If Joe Biden, in a single week, had done the following things: celebrated the death of a decorated Vietnam veteran on social media, fabricated diplomatic conversations with foreign governments that those governments immediately denied, fallen visibly asleep at a live televised event, compared himself to the inventor of the paperclip, and coined a brand new word that doesn't exist in any language, what do you think the New York Times front page would have looked like? How many panel shows would Fox News toss together? I think you know the answer. I think we all know the answer. It would have been wall-to-wall, 24/7, hot take to op-ed to Sunday show, complete consensus that the man cannot be trusted with a set of car keys, let alone the nuclear codes. And honestly, if Biden did all that, the coverage would have been appropriate. It would have been accurate. That's what the press is supposed to do when a president's mental fitness is genuinely in question. But that's if it were Biden. And despite having some senior moments, Biden's mental fitness did not get to this level. Meanwhile, you have the orange skid mark named Donald Trump, and the treatment is different, way different. So let's take a peek at how mentally stable and fit for office the man in charge actually is. Because this week, Trump said at a crime roundtable in Memphis, out loud into a microphone to people with cameras, and I'm reading this verbatim, mutilization, not mutilation, not any word, mutilization with a Z. He also said this.
So I'm tying Homeland Security into voter identification with picture and proof of citizenship in order to vote. And those two items are the most important thing having to do with Homeland Security. So it should be part of the Homeland Security bill. And I'm requesting that the Republican senators do that immediately. You don't have to take a fast vote. Don't worry about Easter going home. In fact, make this one for Jesus, okay? Make this one for Jesus. That's what I tell him. That would be a damn good thing.
Make this one for Jesus regarding the DHS funding bill while threatening to cancel Easter congressional recess. He deployed ICE to airports based on an idea from a radio caller named Linda from Arizona that he saw on Fox News. And then CNN, he told them that was all his idea, like inventing the paperclip. He declared Iran dead, then Iran attacked. Then he threatened to obliterate their power plants, then he backed down and said there were productive talks happening. Iran says there were no talks. Donald Trump posted it anyway. It is insane. But how has everyone else covered this? What's it look like? Well, it's looked a lot like just a foreign policy update, a budget negotiation story, an immigration policy explainer, competent, neutral, sober-toned articles about the substance of decisions being made by a man who this week used the word mutilization and compared himself to the inventor of the paperclip. I want you to think about this. Republicans, they've spent weeks saying that there are no boots on the ground. And Trump has declared victory over Iran like a dozen or so times by now. Yet in the face of those lies, this is a Politico headline. Pentagon prepares to send another 3,000 troops to the Middle East. The decision to move the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the region heightens the possibility U.S. troops will enter Iran. That's it. Nothing calling out Trump's lies, nothing calling out the fact that we're sending troops that we said we weren't going to send to a war that isn't really a war when we've already won that war. There's a term for this, and the media critics, they've been using it for a while now, and it's called sanewashing. It means exactly what it sounds like. Taking behavior that is, let's be honest, genuinely unhinged and running it through the institutional laundering machine of mainstream journalism. And doing that until it comes out as a bold policy move, or an unconventional approach, or a sharp departure from diplomatic norms. The craziness goes in one end, and the AP style book happens to it, and then it's Trump signals willingness to escalate. Mark Jacob, who edited the Chicago Tribune for years, said this: there's never what I would call an umbrella story, one that covers the whole thing and draws broad conclusions like the President of the United States is psychologically unhinged. Instead, you just get individual incidents that, quote, just kind of rolled down the river, never to be seen again. The paperclip thing, it rolls down the river. The mutilization thing rolls down the river. The sleeping at his own cabinet meetings thing rolls down the river. And this is the part that makes me feel genuinely insane. We have the receipts. We've seen exactly what has happened. We saw what happened to Joe Biden. In 2024, he was old and he was visibly slowing down. And he definitely gave a rough debate performance. And he got 18 months of relentless, coordinated, sustained media coverage about his age and fitness for office. Every stumble, every pause, every moment, he appeared to be searching for a word. Covered, analyzed, op-ed written. The New York Times ran a piece about the way he walked downstairs. The way he walked downstairs. Biden, yeah, he was old, but he was rational. Trump, he's old and irrational. That's the difference. One of those is a condition. The other is a pattern of behavior that if you saw it in a stranger at a bus stop, you would quietly move to the other end of the bench. But why? Why does the press treat these two situations so differently? The argument is that political reporters are trained to cover facts, not psychological conditions. That's their argument, at least. They know how to write, Senator X voted against Bill Y, but they don't have a style guide for the president appears to have a deteriorating relationship with consensus reality. It's uncomfortable to them. It sounds partisan to them. It might cost you White House access. So instead of calling it what it is, you find the nearest rational frame and you put the crazy behavior inside that frame and you write it like a straight news story as if the frame were real. Trump says Iran is dead. The rational frame is the president is signaling the war may be entering a new phase. Trump invents the word mutilization. The rational frame is the president emphasized the severity of drug cartel violence. Trump celebrates the death of a decorated veteran. The rational frame is, actually, there is no rational frame for that one. So then CNN buries it on page 6. But that's not what they did to Biden. And I get it. I get the instinct. Nobody wants to be the outlet that publishes Trump seems insane because then Trump is going to threaten you and your credential gets pulled or you get insults instead of answers every time you talk to him. And that's why they got away with it with Biden. His administration just considered all of it noise, right up until the point that it made Kamala the nominee. The path of least resistance is the stenography. Just report what he said. Let the reader decide. Very responsible, very neutral. The problem is that when he says things like mutilization and like the paperclip and make this one for Jesus or Iran is dead, all in the same week, neutrally reporting each individual item without ever drawing the obvious conclusion is a form of deception. It creates an impression of coherent leadership where none actually exists. That former editor at the Chicago Tribune used the phrase, the king of crazy town. That's the real headline. That's the bigger story that normally never gets written. And the reason it never gets written is that writing it requires the institutional press to say clearly what a lot of regular people watching the news can plainly see. That the President of the United States is not well, and that covering his decisions as if they're rational outputs of a rational man is not neutral journalism, it is fear. Fortunately, this channel and all the independent outlets out there, they're not a newspaper. I don't have a White House press credential to protect, so I can say the thing that the institutional press won't. The behavior's not normal. The coverage pretends it is, and someone has to point at the gap between those two things. That's what we're here for. And if you're not subscribed, do me a favor, do it right now. The button is right below this video. Then while you're at it, just hit that little bell right by it, because YouTube buries content like this without your interaction. And every interaction tells the algorithm that this is worth showing to someone else. And right now, we need all of the algorithm help we can get.